My name is Nathan Reyes. I was 19 years old when a random Instagram account started posting pictures of my house from outside my window at midnight. I thought it was a friend pranking me. I was wrong about that. And by the time I figured out the difference, someone was already standing at my window hard enough to crack the glass. Drop a comment if you sleep with your blinds open. Keep listening because this one is going to make you close them. TY10353. I want to start with how normal it felt at first, because that is the part I always forget to mention when I tell this story in person. It did not feel like anything for the first couple of days. That is the whole point of how these things work. I was a sophomore in high school living in a quiet suburb outside Philadelphia. Nothing remarkable about the neighborhood. Tree-lined streets, houses, spaced a reasonable distance apart in the kind of block where everyone knows their immediate neighbors, and maybe a few beyond that. My family had been there since I was 6 years old. I had grown up on that street. I knew every house, every car, every dog that got walked in the mornings. I had a public Instagram with a few hundred followers, mostly people from school, some cousins, a couple of adults I knew through family. I posted casually, maybe once or twice a week, a photo from practice, something funny, the occasional shot from a weekend with friends. Nothing that would stand out on anyone's feed as particularly interesting. I kept the profile public because I had never given it much thought. It felt like a low-stakes decision. One afternoon, I got a notification that a new account had followed me. Username TY10353, no display name, no bio, no profile picture. I clicked on it out of habit the way you do when something pops up on your screen. 5 photos on the profile, 2 followers, following 3 people including me. The 5 photos were all of houses, suburban houses photographed from outside. Different houses, different streets, different angles. Some taken during the day, 1 or 2 in the early evening. The houses were ordinary looking, split levels and colonials, the kind you see on every other block in any town outside a major American city. There were no captions. Comments were disabled across all 5 posts. The account had no engagement, no personality, no indication of a real person behind it. I sat there for about 30 seconds deciding what to do with it. I could have blocked it. I could have removed it from my followers. Instead, I did nothing. I put my phone down and went back to homework. The account seemed like noise, the kind of random junk follow that showed up occasionally on public profiles. I had seen stranger things. 2 nights later, around 11 in the evening, I got a notification that TY10353 had liked my most recent post. I picked up my phone and went back to the profile. Something pulled me to look at it again, and I did not fully understand why. There was a 6th photo now. I recognized it before my brain had fully processed what I was looking at. The front walkway of my house, the particular shape of the overgrown bush on the left side of the porch that my dad had been meaning to trim since August. The address numbers fixed to the brick beside the door, slightly uneven because my dad had put them up himself years ago. The specific angle of the driveway where it met the sidewalk. Someone had stood on my street or close to it and taken a photo of my house and posted it to an Instagram account that had been following me for 2 days. My first reaction was still denial. My immediate thought was that it had to be someone from school, a friend or an acquaintance who thought this would be funny, someone who knew where I lived and had decided to put together a fake account to mess with me. It was the most comfortable explanation available, so I reached for it. I opened the DM and typed very funny, "I know it is one of you. You can drop the act now." The message showed as read within about 2 minutes. No response. I waited. I refreshed. Nothing. I sent a second message. I told them that this was harassment and that I would involve the police. Still no reply. The message sat there read and ignored. I got up and went to my parents' room. My dad was already half asleep, but he sat up when I showed him the phone. He looked at the photo of our house on that account for a long moment. Then he said what I had been telling myself. It was probably someone from school, it was probably a prank. We should still take a look outside just to be sure. He and I walked the entire perimeter of the property and about a block in either direction down the street. It was past midnight on a school night. The neighborhood was completely quiet. No cars idling, no one visible. Porch lights off on most of the houses. The only sound was the wind moving through the trees on the east side of the block. We went back inside. My dad told me to try to get some sleep and said we would deal with it in the morning if anything else came through. I went back to my room. I left the desk lamp on at low brightness because the dark felt less comfortable than it usually did. I sat at my desk and scrolled through my phone without really looking at anything, just waiting for the adrenaline to settle enough to sleep. The account stayed quiet for 2 hours. I was about to turn the lamp off and get into bed when my phone buzzed on the desk. A new DM from TY10353. I opened it. Another photo, this time from the side of the house. The narrow strip of yard between our building and the fence that separated our property from the neighbors. A shot taken from a position that would have put the photographer standing directly in that gap close to the house, close enough to reach out and touch the siding. The timestamp on the post was 9 minutes ago. Before I could react, another photo came in. My bedroom window, shot from outside and below the camera, angled upward at the glass. The blue flicker of my television was reflected in the pane, visible and unmistakable. He was standing outside my window right now. He had been in the side yard 9 minutes ago, and now he was at my window. A third D&M appeared in the chat. It said, "Look out your window." I did not move. I sat completely still in my desk chair for several seconds. My hands were flat on the desk in front of me, and I was aware of them in a way I normally was not aware of their stillness, aware that I was not reaching for the lamp or for my phone or for anything. I reached over slowly and turned off the television. I did not want to be visible. I did not want there to be anything casting light through that glass. No glow, no flicker, nothing that could be used to track my position in the room. I slid off the desk chair onto the floor. I kept my body low and moved on my hands and knees across the carpet toward the bedroom door. The whole time I was doing this, I was watching the window from below, watching the lower half of the frame, where the light from outside was just barely visible along the edge of the blinds. I was about 3 feet from the door when the banging started. Not knocking. I want to be precise about this because the word knocking does not capture it. Both fists against the glass in a fast alternating pattern, the kind of force that made the window frame vibrate in the wall and sent a physical sensation through the floor and into my palms where they were pressed against the carpet. The sound was loud enough that it felt like it was coming from inside the room rather than outside it. I stopped moving and looked back at the window. A figure pressed close to the glass, not quite touching it, but close. I could make out the shape of a head, the rough outline of shoulders, but no features. The face was just a dark oval against the slightly lighter dark of the outside. I got up and ran. I went straight to my parents' room, pushed the door open, turned on the overhead light, and pulled my dad out of bed by the arm. He heard the last several seconds of the banging before it stopped. By the time we got back to my room and I switched on the lights, the figure at the window was gone. The yard outside was empty. The street beyond it was quiet. My dad stood in my room listening to the silence for a moment. Then he went and got his phone and called 911. 2 officers arrived within 15 minutes. They walked the exterior of the property with flashlights. They found nothing, but they told us something that mattered. Because the contact had been made through Instagram, the platform could be legally compelled to provide account information. A formal request through the department could identify the account owner within a reasonable time frame. They told us to come to the precinct the next morning and file a complete report. We did. The process was slower than the movies make it look. A lot of paperwork, a lot of sitting in beige rooms and repeating the same details to different people Forms about the account username, the timeline of events, the content of the messages. I had kept my phone and had not deleted anything which the officer said was important. By the following afternoon, we had a name. The account belonged to a kid I will call Luke, who attended my high school. I had seen him in the hallways. We had never spoken, never had a class together, never interacted in any way that I could recall. He was not someone who moved through the school invisibly. He was someone people noticed and instinctively kept distance from without always being able to articulate why. There was something in his affect, the way he watched people, the way he responded to things that made other students and some teachers visibly uncomfortable. I had no idea why he had selected me specifically. The investigators did not surface a clear reason either. It was not targeted in any way I could identify. I was not someone who had interacted with him. I had not done anything to attract his attention that I was aware of. He had simply chosen my public account and watched it, and then he had come to the house. He was charged with harassment, stalking, and attempted breaking and entering. When the investigators examined the window frame the next morning in daylight, they found small fractures in the glass radiating from the area of heaviest impact. He had hit that window hard enough to begin cracking it. I replaced the blinds in my room with blackout curtains that weekend. Thick ones, the kind that do not allow any light through in either direction. I moved my bed to the wall opposite the window. I got into the habit of closing the curtains the moment the room light came on in the evening. That habit has not gone away. Several years later, I still do it every single night. My hand finds the curtain pull before I even consciously register that I have crossed the room. The box in the sand. The second story involves a night at a beach in my town. I was 18 at the time. I want to tell you exactly how this unfolded because the construction of it is the thing that makes me most uncomfortable when I look back at it. Someone put real thought into what happened that night, and I walked right into it. I got a follow request on Instagram from a profile with the username TracyL22. The profile photo was a young woman, blonde, attractive around my age. Her account had a reasonable number of posts, a follower count in the low hundreds, the kind of profile that looked like a real person who used Instagram casually without a large following. That evening, she sent me a direct message. She said she had come across my profile and thought I was good looking. She was easy to talk to. The conversation had a natural rhythm, the kind that feels effortless in the early stages of getting to know someone. She told me she was in a complicated situation with a boyfriend, that they kept fighting, that she needed a break from the usual and just wanted to hang out with someone different, no pressure, just an evening to breathe. I texted my friend Joe. He told me to go. That was all the encouragement I needed at 18. She suggested the Bayside Beach at the edge of town. I knew the spot well. It was a small strip of sand. At the end of a local road, a parking lot, above it, a low dune covered in beach grass, and a dense bush line that curved around the perimeter of the lot. My friend group had used it for years as a low-key place to hang out on warm evenings. Nothing busy, nothing commercial, just a quiet little piece of shore that locals knew about. We agreed on 11 o'clock. I left the house around 10:40, drove the familiar route, and pulled into the parking lot at 10:50. The lot was empty except for my car. No other vehicles, no lights on anywhere nearby, just the ambient glow of the town behind me and the dark of the water ahead. I sent her a DM telling her I had arrived. Her reply came in almost immediately. She said she had left something in the sand for me. She told me to go look. I walked down from the lot to the beach. It was a warm night with no wind. The water was flat and dark. The sand was empty in both directions as far as I could see, except for a small cardboard box sitting near the waterline. I walked to it and picked it up. It was light sealed with a single strip of tape. I opened it. Inside was a Polaroid photograph. It was a picture of my car in the parking lot. Taken from somewhere along the edge of the lot, the shot angled across the gravel toward my car, the make and model and partial license plate all clearly visible. The timestamp on the white border of the Polaroid showed it had been taken within the last 20 minutes. I stood at the waterline holding that photograph and felt the first real shift in how I was experiencing the evening. Not panic, not yet. More like a recalibration. The sense of a situation quietly changing shape around you while you are trying to process what you are looking at. Someone had been in that parking lot before I arrived. They had watched me pull in. They had taken a photo of my car, put it in a box, carried it down to the beach, and placed it at the waterline before I got there. All of this without me seeing or hearing any of it. I DM'd her and said she had my attention. I asked where she was. She replied, "Come find me." I looked at the Polaroid again. The angle of the shot, the direction it was taken from, placed the photographer at the far end of the parking lot, near the curve where the bush line was thickest. I walked back up from the beach to the lot and approached that area. The bushes were dense there, the kind of growth that accumulated over years, layers of branches and older wood underneath newer growth. I stopped at the edge of the clearing in front of the bushes. The lot was completely silent. I could hear the water behind me and nothing else. Then I heard the sound. The only way I have ever been able to describe it to people is this. Imagine someone trying to gargle with no water in their mouth. A wet, rhythmic, low sound coming from ground level from inside the bush. Not from behind it or above it. From within it, close to the dirt. I said her name. I reached forward and pushed a branch aside. A man was crouched in the dirt beneath the bush. He was facing away from me, hunched forward with his head down his back, visible through the gap I had made in the branches. He was not moving. The sound was coming from him. At the noise of the branch, he turned, not slowly. His head snapped around over his shoulder in a single sharp motion, the way something mechanical moves when it reaches its limit, and his eyes found me immediately. My palms hit the concrete of the parking lot before I had any awareness of falling backward. I was already moving by the time I registered what I had seen. I ran to my car, got locked, every door started the engine, and drove out of that lot without looking back. I drove several blocks before I pulled over and sat in the dark trying to slow my breathing down. I tried to open the Tracy account to send a message. The profile was gone, deleted. When I searched the username, it came back with nothing. I told Joe and the others the next morning. Nobody had a good explanation for any of it. The group still used the beach that summer, but I did not go back with them. Not once. I drove past it occasionally and felt the same particular tightness in my chest each time. I do not know who the man in the bushes was. I have thought about the logistics of that evening many times over the years. Someone had access to a Polaroid camera. They had been at that location before 11 early enough to set everything up. They had photographed my car within minutes of my arrival. They had either entered the bushes while I was walking down to the water, or they had been in there already when I pulled into the lot. I do not know what was supposed to happen next. The Tracy account was the mechanism. The beach was the destination. And the man crouched in the dirt was whatever came after that. I was lucky that I left when I left. I am still not entirely sure what I am saying when I say that. I just know that it is true. The voice at the beach. The third story belongs to a woman I will call Jamie. She was 22 when this started, and she is several years older now, and it has still not fully resolved. She told it to me in detail because she wants people to understand what long-term targeted harassment actually feels like from inside it. It does not feel like a horror movie. It feels like background noise that occasionally spikes into something unbearable and then goes quiet again, just long enough for you to start believing it is over. Jamie lived in a beach town on the Jersey Shore. She was recently out of college working a local job, living in an apartment near the water with a roommate. She had a public Instagram that she posted regularly throughout the summer. Beach photos, day trips, food, the visual diary of a young person in a coastal town during the warm months. She had a few thousand followers, a mix of friends and strangers, and she was not particularly careful about who she let follow her. Her follower count was part of her enjoyment of the platform. She liked seeing it grow. One day, a follow request came in from an account with a completely blank profile. No photo, no posts, no followers, no bio. If she accepted, she would be the only account it followed. She accepted without thinking about it. A week went by without anything from the account. Then it left a comment on a beach photo from the previous week. One word: hot. Jamie registered it and moved on. Comments from unknown accounts were common enough that this one did not stand out. She had received similar things many times, and they had never amounted to anything. Over the following days, the account worked through her profile, leaving likes. Not all at once. Spread over several days in a pattern that felt less like someone browsing and more like someone studying. A few likes on older posts one evening, a few more the next morning, methodical, unhurried. Then one evening, her phone rang. Unknown number. She picked up. A man's voice, very deep with a quality she described as deliberate, the voice of someone who had thought about how they were going to sound before making the call. He said her name. He asked if it was her. She hung up. She went to her room and closed the blinds on both windows. She sat on her bed and tried to process what had just happened. Unknown number, her name, her cell phone number, which was not on her Instagram profile. He had found it somewhere else, through someone else, through some other channel. She told herself it was probably a coincidence, a wrong number where the person happened to ask for a name that sounded like hers. She built the most comfortable explanation she could find and sat with it until it felt believable enough. The next day, the blank account tagged her in a photo. She went to see it. It was a photograph of the street around her block. Not her house specifically, just the general area. The angle of the shot and the visible landmarks placed it within 200 yards of her building. She blocked the account immediately and stopped posting for several days. She told her roommate about the phone call, but framed it as probably nothing. She did not call the police. She was not sure she had enough to justify it, and she did not want to be told she was overreacting. 10 days went by with nothing. She started posting again. She went to the beach with her friend Jess on a weekday when the crowds were lighter. They parked in the main lot and were unloading chairs from the trunk when a man walked across the lot toward them. He was wearing jeans and sunglasses. He came directly to Jamie and told her he liked her swimsuit. She thanked him without making eye contact and turned back to the trunk. He did not leave. He asked Jess how their day was going. His voice filled the space between the cars, and Jamie felt it before she consciously identified it. That specific quality, that deliberate depth. She turned her head slowly and looked at him. He was looking back at her with an expression that was not quite a smile. The sunglasses made it impossible to read his eyes, but his mouth had a particular set to it. The expression of someone who was waiting to be recognized. She told Jess in a low voice to get in the car. She said it calmly, and she said it clearly. Jess asked no questions and got in. Jamie drove out of that parking lot without looking back. She merged onto the main road and drove for several miles before pulling into a gas station and stopping. Her hands on the steering wheel were not entirely steady. She explained everything to Jess on the drive. The follow request, the comment and the likes, the phone call, the tagged photo of her block. And now this man at the beach who had her phone number and knew where she lived and had just shown up at the same beach she was at on a random weekday morning. She had never posted which beach she was going to. She had not posted that morning at all. He had been watching her in some other way, tracking her movements through some means she could not identify. Her father went over her car when she got home, ran his hands under the wheel wells and along the frame. He found nothing, but the not finding anything did not make her feel better the way she had hoped it would. It just meant that if he was tracking her, he was doing it through something she could not see or touch. She filed a police report that afternoon. The officer who took it was thorough and took her seriously. He noted the Instagram account, the phone call, the tagged photo, and the encounter at the beach. He told her the challenge was that none of these things individually met a clear legal threshold, and the account had been blocked before it could be subpoenaed. He said he would keep the report active and to document any further contact immediately. Several days after the beach encounter, a new DM arrived on Instagram from a different account. Brand new profile, blank like the first one. It said, "Remember that time we met at the beach?" She had blocked the first account. He had made a second one. He had used it immediately to remind her that he knew what she looked like in person, that they had stood next to each other, that in whatever version of events he was running in his mind, meeting her at the beach was something she would also remember. She blocked the second account and reported it. She changed her Instagram to private. She went through her entire follower list and removed every account she could not immediately identify. She has not heard anything since. She told me that the silence is not comforting. She knows from what she has read about patterns like this that silence does not mean it stopped. It means the visible part stopped. It means he recalibrated. She still drives to the beach sometimes, but she does not go alone. She does not post about going until she has already left. She does not sit with her back to the parking lot. She does not wear headphones on the way to and from her car. She told me the thing that has stayed with her longest is the expression on his face at the parking lot, that particular set of his mouth. She could not see his eyes, but she saw the way his face arranged itself when she turned and looked at him directly. She said it looked like satisfaction, the quiet kind, the kind that has been waiting a long time. What the account already knows, I want to bring these three stories together because the connecting thread between them is what matters most. In my story with TIY10353, the account spent 2 full days establishing itself as harmless background noise before it did anything. It followed me. It liked a photo. It let me get comfortable enough to decide it was not worth blocking. That window of 2 days was not impatience. It was calculated. By the time the photos of my house started appearing, I had already psychologically categorized the account as low priority. I had to actively override that categorization when things escalated. In the beach story, the Tracy account had already done significant preparation before I ever arrived at the parking lot. A Polaroid camera, a box, time spent at that location in advance, knowledge of what my car looked like and where I would park. None of that is compatible with someone who saw my account and acted impulsively. That was a plan that required preparation over multiple days at minimum. In Jamie's story, the blank account spent the better part of 2 weeks moving through her profile before making any direct contact. Likes spread across days. One comment, a phone call, a tagged photo, each piece individually dismissible. Together, they formed a detailed picture of someone learning her routine, identifying her location, acquiring her phone number from a secondary source, and then eventually showing up in person at a location she frequented. 3 different approaches, 3 different time frames, 3 different levels of visible aggression, but the same underlying logic running through all of them. The public profile is the entry point. The content of the profile is the research material, and patience is the method. Your Instagram shows what you look like from multiple angles and in multiple lighting conditions. It shows what your car looks like if you have ever posted near it or with it in the background. It shows what your neighborhood looks like if you have ever posted a story with recognizable streets or landmarks. It shows what time you typically wake up and go to bed based on when you post. It shows which beaches you go to, which gyms you use, which parking lots you frequent. If you post stories regularly, it shows your movements in near real time. Most people who see all of that information are harmless. The problem is that the harmful ones are patient, and you cannot tell the difference at the follow request stage. Luke spent weeks watching my account before he stood outside my window. The person behind Tracy spent enough time studying my habits to know which beach I would go to and what my car looked like. The man at Jamie's beach had been tracking her through some means she still does not fully understand, which suggests he had been doing it long enough to develop a method. None of these situations began with something alarming. They began with something small that was easy to dismiss. A follow from a blank account, a like from a low-activity profile, a DM from an attractive stranger. The question of whether to take small things seriously before they become large things is one I think about every time I hear a story like these. I did not take the follow from TY10353 seriously. I told myself it was noise. I had 2 full days to block that account before anything happened, and I chose to do nothing. I am not saying that to be self-critical. I am saying it because I think most people in my position would have made the same choice. The account looked like spam. Blocking it felt like an overreaction to nothing. But the person behind it was not nothing. He was already watching. He had already taken photos of my house. He was already planning the night at the window before I knew he existed. Set your account to private. Review your followers list regularly. Look for accounts that have been consistently watching your stories without engaging in any other way. Pay attention to new follows with blank or minimal profiles, particularly if they immediately begin working through your older content. These are small actions. They take a few minutes. They will not feel urgent when you do them. They will feel like optional housekeeping on a platform you use casually. But the cracks in my bedroom window glass caught the morning light for weeks before my dad replaced it. I looked at them every day while I was getting dressed. Hairline fractures spreading from a single point of impact outward. That is what someone who has been watching you for a while is capable of when they finally decide to make contact. Close the blinds, go private, lock the door, and the next time a blank account follows you and then likes a post 2 days later, do not convince yourself it is noise.